So after years and years of experimentation and trying different things, Metallica finally were ready to jump back and create a truly thrash record that had made Metallica fans reminisce about the old days. So today, we're reviewing Death Magnetic, one of the most underrated and overhated albums of Metallica's discography. And we're gonna see the positive and negative in one of my personal favorites. So welcome friends to our journey to review each and every single one of the Metallica albums before the next one drops later this year or early next year. So let's start. In order to make an album old school style, you need to make most of the features that shape these records return again. So what exactly are these features? Number one, a long, epic opening song to the album. Metallica did these long, epic, fast, thrashy songs that started with a melodic section all throughout the 80s, with songs like Fight Fire with Fire, Battery, and Blackened. All of these songs started out with a melodic section, and then explodes into a fast, crazy, incredibly strong riff. And Metallica stopped doing these songs beginning from the Black Album up to Saint Anger. They made other really cool songs that served their roles really well for these specific records. But if you want to do a Back to the Roots record, the old layout has to come back with a melodic intro, then exploding into a strong riff. So That Was Just Your Life became another worthy follow-up to the normal Metallica classic opener formula. Another thing that disappeared out of Metallica's records for years was an instrumental. All of the classic old-school Metallica albums have instrumentals, Anastasia, The Call of Cthulhu, Orion, and Till Lumicidi. Metallica cut instrumentals beginning from the Black Album up until reaching Saint Anger. So an instrumental had such a crucial role in shaping Metallica's classic record backbone that it had to come back. And indeed, it did come back with Suicide and Redemption. Another thing that shaped the classic Metallica sound, and Metallica stayed away from it in their phase of experimentation, was playing in E standard tuning. Load and Reload, most of the album was in half step down, and Saint Anger tunings really went to different places. So in order to recapture the essence of the old school Metallica sound, Metallica went back to E standard tuning like they did in their classic records in Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All.
Why does Metallica have everything tuned down a half step? So we ended up trying the songs in A440 tuning, which is a natural tuning, and I think that's great because James, he can still sing his ass off, and he's got the ability to hit the notes, and there's a bit more angst to the vocal. I feel it sounds a little bit higher, so I really like what James did. I'm happy that Rick actually suggested that.
And also Metallica is known for a feature that Cliff introduced to the band, and they didn't use it for quite a while. Harmonies have returned to make an old school record, because we all know how heavily important harmonization was in the old school period of Metallica. Lightning, Master, Justice. So Death Magnetic is full of unique and beautiful harmonies that are really worthy successors of Metallica's amazing work of harmonization in the 80s. it isn't just the musical core that shaped the 80s era, but also the packaging in which the songs were delivered to you. And I mean the track listing. What songs go in which order? This is really important to quite grasp the old school spirit. Have the album structure more or so the same. You have a thrashy opening song with a melodic opener. Then you have a long, complex, a bit less thrashy song that is the title track. Then you have a slow, heavy song. Then you have a power ballad that starts soft and then escalates to be heavy. Fifth song as fast and as thrashy as possible. Sixth song slower and heavier. Seventh song an instrumental, the pre-closer song. And eighth song was the short, thrashy song. This layout is apparent on Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Unjustice for All. On Death Magnetic, it was a bit tweaked, but it remained more or so the same. You have the closing fast song, My Apocalypse, the pre-closer instrumental, Suicide and Redemption, the fast opener with the melodic beginning, That Was Just Your Life, the number 4 ballad that starts soft and then escalates heavy, The Day Never Comes, the number 5 thrashy song, All Nightmare Long. The big difference was that Magnetic didn't really have a successor to For Whom the Bell Tolls, or The Thing That Should Not Be, and it didn't have a title track, but the layout remained more or so the same. So let's talk a bit about the production. What are the most criticized elements about the album? So what makes the production a weak feature about Death Magnetic? Well, for instance, the compression. The album is so overcompressed. All the layers of bass guitar, drums, vocals are squished and smushed together, which makes it so overcompressed, or in other words, so loud. If you have your speakers at 7 out of 10 volume and enjoying your normal Enter Sandman, when All Nightmare Long pops up on your playlist, you'll have to lower the volume at 5 or even 4. It's not only loud, but because all the layers are pretty compressed and pretty smushed together, it's not clear. You wouldn't be able to transcribe each layer individually. This compression is also present in a lot of pop songs. Being loud is one of the trends of pop crap modern music. So Death Magnetic was also a victim of what's known as the loudness war, squishing layers in order to make it loud and, I don't know, stand out, which is dumb. Death Magnetic also had a really bad drum sound. It was really weird. Metallica, the biggest metal band on the planet, can't have more quality in the drums than that really noisy drums. It's really weird, really unprofessional, and noisy. Death Magnetic was also the first real studio album in Metallica's discography to have autotune. S&M had it, but I'm talking about a real studio album here with full-on original music. The autotune was really clear and quite overused in some of the vocal parts.
Drop the hourglass of time, spilling sand we will not find as we gather here today.
Rob did a great job on the bass when it came to Death Magnetic, but there was a problem. We couldn't hear what the hell he was doing there, even when he was in the foreground in Suicide and Redemption. The bass part is so buried. Like we have to listen to the live show to get what Rob is doing there. So bass not being there is another negative element about the production of Death Magnetic. The bass tone, however, on Death Magnetic is awesome. It's heavy, it's meaty. And really reminds me of Cliff's bass tone on Ride the Lightning. The guitar tone, however, is pretty cool, but it doesn't stand out really like Justice and Ride the Lightning tones, but I still like it. And again, as usual, it's a different flavor than the rest of the records, as usual, because Metallica guitar tones are always so different from each other. So let's dive deep into James's vocals. As we said, the vocals are auto-tuned, but let's look at the bigger picture here and actually analyze the vocals. James sounded so great on the record. He really sounded much different than the previous record, Saint Anger. He sounded mostly like being a metal vocalist, no precise singing like Load and Reload, but more like being metal, shouting, no complicated singing and vocals.
Hooked into this deceiver, need more and more. Into the endless fever, need more and more. Love is a four-letter word, and never spoken here. Love is a four-letter word. Here in this prison, we cross that line into the grips, total eclipse, suffer unto my apocalypse.
And I really liked James's melodic vocals on Magnetic. After all of these years, he could still deliver beautiful, catchy vocals to go on top of the riffs.
Born to push you around, better just stay down. You pull away, he hits the flesh, you hit the ground. Mouth so full of lies, tend to black your eyes. How can I be lost if I've got nowhere to go? Search for seas of gold. How come it's got so cold? How can I be lost in remembrance I relive? And how can I blame you when it's me I can't forgive? Say, is that rain or are they tears that stained your concrete face for years? The crying, weeping, shedding strife, year after year, life after life.
And I really have a question. How the hell does James sing and play That Was Just Your Life at the same time? I can't even do it while reading the lyrics in front of me.
Like a siren in my head that always threatens to repeat. Like a blind man that I shoved into the speeding driver's seat. Like a face that learns to speak when all I knew is how to bite.
So yeah, one of the most interesting vocal parts of Metallica's discography is like rapping there or something. There is a 5-year gap between Saint Anger and Death Magnetic, and in these years, we saw the gradual transition from Saint Anger sound and how Metallica recaptured their old sound and moved on from the Saint Anger style. And one of the things we know is that Rick Rubin was the one that suggested Metallica doing some old school thrash metal stuff. The guys in Metallica didn't really think they were capable of recapturing that era, so really huge credit goes to Rick Rubin.
The reconnecting with the past is something that definitely happened organically. Rick made us comfortable about revisiting and being maybe inspired by some of the records we put out in the 80s.
I get that we want to capture the essence, the hunger, the simplicity of Metallica, and that's what I think we captured on Death Magnetic.
And of course, he didn't tell them to copy what they were doing in the 80s, but just tried to recapture the essence of that era. So what Rick did was make them relive the 80s vibes. He advised them to listen to the same records they were listening to at the time. Not copy, but have your musical influence and creativity wanting the same outcomes as the 80s. And then we'll see what comes out of it.
He said to us from the very beginning, whatever you guys were doing, whatever you guys were thinking, whatever you guys were listening to.
Try and take yourselves back to 1981. Reconnect with the early years. Don't be afraid of that.
And try to bring your musical minds there in the present day.
Listen to the same records that you listened to in the 80s. Try and write the same way. It was never copy what you were doing musically. It was just put yourself in that headspace.
Another thing in that 5-year gap that helped Metallica recapture the old sound was playing the entire Master of Puppets album live. Really playing all of these songs live made them close to the thrash metal mentality and put them under the skin of their younger selves.
We actually started most of the creative process in the summer of 2006, which was the same time that the Master Puppets 20th anniversary was going down, and we actually played the whole record live all over Europe and Asia and stuff. So we kind of got in under the skin of Master Puppets there for a while, and right as we kind of started writing these new songs for Death Magnetic, and so it certainly made us feel comfortable about embracing some of the things that we had done in the 80s for the first time really in 15, 17 years.
And this transition from Saint Anger to Death Magnetic was quite gradual, Metallica trying out different things and failing till they reached the outcome they wanted. And the proof for that is the songs that were played live, the new song and the other new song. These songs sounded nothing like Death Magnetic, the riffs, the overall style. And another proof that Metallica were reinventing their sound was Beyond Magnetic. 4 songs that didn't make the cut for Death Magnetic, and some of the riffs really sounded very close to the Saint Anger style. So we see how Metallica tried so hard to move past their 2003 selves and move on to something different, and how they kept reshaping and restyling until it clicked, like what happened on All Nightmare Long. The riffs from Saint Anger writing sessions then evolved into Demo Magnetic, then evolved into the fully evolved song on Death Magnetic. Demo Magnetic has also some of the Saint Anger spirit that was completely removed on Death Magnetic.
I wake up screaming, life is undenied. Stop the fire, stop the fire, spark the wire, come on, start the fire.
So what is the theme of Death Magnetic? Well, it's right in the album title, Death. The story behind how Metallica came up with the name is linked to James. They had a photo of Lane Staley of Alice in Chains in the studio, and he thought, why would someone abuse drugs that heavily and die so young? So the title of the record, as James said, started out as a sort of a tribute to all the people that died in the rock and roll field. And then from there, it got him thinking about death. The album name, Death Magnetic, talks about how everyone is drawn to death. Some people are afraid of it and try to push away, but everyone knows it's inevitable. You are being drawn to it like a magnet, while at the same time, you're living your life. As James said, death is just the big white elephant in the room that is happening to everyone, and everyone has to deal with it at some point in their lives. So let's look at the very awesome way of visualizing this idea into a cover. The album art consists of a coffin right there in the middle, and the coffin is surrounded by a huge magnetic field. And the letters D and C in the 2 words death and magnetic are basically magnets. Not all of the songs talk about death, but we have a good chunk of the record that relates to the lyrical theme, such as That Was Just Your Life, talking about the feeling of shock accompanied by the realization that you've wasted your life and you're closer to death without accomplishing anything. And Cyanide, about using poison, cyanide, to commit suicide. Suicide and Redemption, the name speaks for itself. And My Apocalypse is about a car accident from the perspective of the victim. One of the most heavily criticized elements about Death Magnetic is its composition. The first thing that people say is that the album is so overdone, which is partially true. Death Magnetic has the longest average duration when it comes to the entire Metallica discography, and yes, even more than Justice. Most of the songs are over 7 minutes long, which is of course a very long duration, but for me, I do not find listening to the songs difficult, because as usual, Metallica is very good at making 8 or 9 minute songs pass like nothing happened. Another heavily criticized element about the composition of Death Magnetic is that it feels a little bit forced. Death Magnetic, when it comes to the 10 main studio albums, feels like it has the lowest quality of transitions. Don't get me wrong, it's not terrible, and on some of the songs there isn't even a problem, but on a lot of songs, the songs feel like the stitches in between the riffs are very clear to me. The transition sometimes feels pretty odd, like it comes out of nowhere. The most clear example of that is the end of the line. Even though I love the song, it sometimes just goes from one riff to another without any proper transition. On all of the songs besides the end of the line, it isn't really a huge problem. The parts where the transitions are weak aren't very clear, but they have some moments where the transitions don't feel smooth. So it feels like with just 5% more work put into composition, the album would have been perfect. It's not awful, it's still pretty good quality of composition, because come on, it's Metallica after all, the kings of transitions. But on almost all of the other records, the composition was much more stable and felt like a single entity more than Death Magnetic. Metallica was really broken in the Saint Anger period, and after that, they rethought about a lot of stuff inside of the band and cleaned the toxicity that accompanied what happened with Jason. Metallica now were a healthy entity, and that's important when you are in a group project, that everyone feels valued and appreciated. They all worked as one entity, and we saw how Metallica fixed everything wrong with treating Jason, with Rob being in the band.
They really were open to suggestion, and they wanted to hear what I had to say. And at the same time, I know that, you know, with Lars and James especially, you got to let those guys kind of run with an arrangement when it comes to arranging songs and stuff. It's like going to the best school of songwriting on the planet.
They let him speak his mind, contribute ideas like on All Nightmare Long, and not just Rob, but everyone contributed ideas. Everyone worked on Death Magnetic, therefore, everyone's name was on the writing credits, not just James and Lars.
Maybe it's a little bit of wisdom sinking through this thick thing, but starting to figure out the dynamic of the band. Why? We're not really figuring out why, but acknowledging what we do have and how it works. We're realizing that we need each other, and we go places when we're together, and we're able to achieve great things with the Metallica key, you know?
It's all pretty good, and Saint Anger and Some Kind of Monster, that's those are distant memories.
Even though we talked about the composition quality taking a bit of a hit on Magnetic, riffs, solos, and harmonies were all on the highest level, and proved how these guys still could write awesome music after all of these years. Let's first talk about the riffs. When it came to thrashy, fast, old school type of riffs, Metallica really delivered with a lot of these incredible, fast, catchy riffs. And also, we got a lot of melodic, clean riffs, because Metallica can't be without that. And God, the quality of melodies was incredible on Death Magnetic. And Death Magnetic 2 added to the Metallica discography some of the most unique and cool sounding riffs that for me stand out in the Metallica catalog. They are so unique and so different, and of course so catchy. When it came to Kirk's job on the record, I absolutely loved it. All of the solos had parts that proved how he still had it when he freaking works on the solos and doesn't improvise everything. In speedy parts or thrashy solos, most of the solos on the record were top notch. I've noticed that in Magnetic solos, Kirk mostly balanced his solos with two things: random shredding like Kill 'Em All, and precise hooks here and there like Justice, Master, and Ride the Lightning to keep the solo awesome. And that basically created the Death Magnetic style, this balance of random shredding and hooks. And of course, that James solo on Suicide and Redemption was freaking insane. One of the best things ever. It was so fast, it was shreddy, but had some flavor and sweetness to it. What a solo, really. So we discussed everything we could today about one of my personal favorites, Death Magnetic, both the good and the bad. Tell me, do you like Death Magnetic? Don't you like it? And what is your favorite song on this incredible album?